Welcome to another episode of the Business Bootcamp for Freelance Writers video blog and podcast. I'm Kevin Corbley, and today I want to talk about pricing because it seems like there are always issues in pricing. Sure, for writers, we set our per project rates and we usually have an hourly rate too, but there are situations that I promise you, if you haven't run into them already, you will, where the value of a project really goes beyond your hourly rate or your per project rate, and specifically it's the value to the client. I know that sounds a little bit odd, but let me give you a perfect example. That actually, I'm going to give you two examples. First one is a writing example. The second one is more of a consulting example, and I know a lot of writers also consult the way I do. So the first one, just imagine a client comes to you and says, hey, we want you to write 10 tweets. Okay, 10 tweets, I mean, maybe it's going to take you an hour, and okay, that's good, so you're going to charge an hour for the work. Okay, fair enough. But what if they say, we want you to tweet this out on your Twitter account because we know you have 1 million followers? I know it sounds a little bit hypothetical, but I'm trying to make the point that you've done work in that case to develop that big Twitter following, and that has a lot of value to your client. Really, it has value to you too, but it far exceeds that 1 hour of work that you might charge them. So you're going to have to figure out that kind of value added fee that you're going to charge the client, because this has value to them. And so that's one thing you need to take into account. Now let me give you an example of a non-writing situation that I've run into in a couple different situations, couple variations. But I want to give you an example. Years ago, many years ago, a friend of mine, I was visiting in California, and she said, hey, artist called P. Buckley Moss is down the street at the art gallery. She's signing prints, and my friend wanted to buy a print to give to a friend who was getting married or something like that, and she wanted P. Buckley Moss to sign it. So I went with her. I didn't know who P. Buckley Moss was, but really terrific artist. And I got to talking to her. Wonderful, wonderful lady. And actually, she's still alive. I just looked her up. And so anyway, but I was talking to her, and I just didn't know a lot of artists back then. And I asked her, how long does it take you to paint one of these pieces? And she gave me a response that actually I've heard many times from artists and novelists since then. She said, well, actually, it takes me 30 years if you take into account all the blood, sweat, and tears I've put into developing my craft. And, fair enough. I think that's, kind of humorous, but there's a lot of truth to it as well. Well, I had a situation like that, and I'm nowhere near as talented as P. Buckley Moss, but I had a client come to me, and they wanted me to do something odd. It wasn't a writing project. This was a big engineering company, and they had not been a client previously. But what they wanted me to do was set up a series of one-on-one interviews with several trade publication editors in the Washington, D.C. area. And I think it was because the engineering company had new executives had come on board or something like that, and they wanted to, the executives to get to know the editors and vice versa. Fair enough. Well, so they gave me a list of 10 publications. And it just so happened that 9 of those publications, I knew the editors really well. And that's why they came to me, because they knew I worked in this particular industry. And so it was easy. I knew all I had to do was pick up the phone or send an email and say, hey, do you want to, do an interview with these new executives of this big engineering company? And so what I didn't really know how to price it, so I said, I'm just going to charge my hourly rate. So it took me, all told, to make the emails and the phone calls and schedule. I had to get the actual time set, 3 hours to set up 10 interviews. Okay, and I knew that this was not enough money, but I just didn't know at the time. Now, I'd already been in business several years at this point, probably 9 or 10 years, so I should have known better, but I didn't. So I charged them, and I think my hourly rate at the time was $100 or $125. So I charged them $375 to set up these 10 interviews. And so a little bit later, I was talking to a friend of mine who worked at a big PR firm in DC, told him this situation, and he looked at me and said, I would have charged $15,000 to set up those 10 interviews for that big company. And I thought to myself, geez, okay, well, I'm not a big PR firm like where he worked, but I probably could have charged half that much, $7,500, right? But I had charged $375. So I left more than $7,000 on the table. So, and that's when it really sunk in. You know, I should have been thinking more P. Buckley Moss and a little less Kevin Corbley. I had the reason I was able to make those calls and line up those interviews so easily was because of the 9 or 10 years of experience I already had and the time I had put into nurturing those relationships with the editors. And there's value to that. So it's a value added situation. So keep in mind, that company, that engineering company, came to me not because they didn't have 2 or 3 hours to make the phone calls and set up the interviews. It's because they didn't have that background and those relationships that I had. And there's a price tag to put on those things. So that's just something to keep in mind as you move forward, that everything doesn't fit neatly in pricing categories of projects and hourly rates. Sometimes you need to get paid for your vast experience and the unique value added you bring to a situation. All right, so thanks for joining me today. I kind of rambled on this one. If you'd like additional insights on the business of freelance writing, as well as information on some of the online courses and classes I offer, I invite you to visit my blog site at www.writingbizcamp.com, and biz is B-I-Z. So writingbizcamp.com. Until next time, keep on writing.